We're going to get started. Joe's got a busy day, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have everybody here. Before we get started, I'm going to do just a little bit of quick housekeeping. So we have our book club. Our next book that we're reading this month is The Glass Ledge by Iman Obu. Iman was a molecular biologist by trade, who then became Miss New York and then became the CEO of Sway Media. So we're reading Iman's book. We follow that up with Mark Champagne's book called Personal Socrates. And we're looking forward to having him on. And then we end the year with Daisy Auger Dominguez's book, Inclusion Revolution. So super excited about those. In terms of our Conversations with Legends series, obviously today we have Joe. We're following that up. John Barrows is going to be joining us October 25th. For those of you who don't know John, he is the founder and CEO of Sell Better. Their clients are Google, LinkedIn, Salesforce, etc. He has a mere 400,000 followers on LinkedIn. We follow that up with an absolute legend, Meredith Vieira, broadcasting legend from 60 Minutes, The View, Dateline, The Today Show. And then November 15th, we have Brian Covey, who was a pro soccer player turned sales exec and a personal branding expert. So we're really excited about that. The format for today's call, just so you guys know, we're going to spend about 30 minutes, a little bit less. I'm going to ask Joe a bunch of questions that are percolating in my head after reading his incredible book. And then we're going to open it up for you guys to ask questions. Joe has a hard stop at the top of the hour. So all I would ask is that if you do have a question, make sure it's super succinct and that you've really thought it out. If you do have a question, in the chat, just say, I have a question for Joe, and Randy is going to send me all those names, and we'll tee you up and get you hooked up with Joe. So without any further ado, I wanted to introduce Joe Foster. As I've said in the LinkedIn stuff that we've been putting out prior to this, there's really not much more you need to say other than founder of Reebok. I mean, that is just an unbelievably iconic brand that Joe started in 1958 with his brother Jeffrey. I think it was called Mercury back then. And then you found out a couple of years later that maybe some trademark issues there. So it became Reebok. Joe was, I believe, all of 23 years old when he founded Reebok. His parents owned a company called J.W. Foster. There's a Chariots of Fire reference that maybe Joe will talk about a little bit later on. He went on, sold Reebok, and wrote about his life in this book right here, Shoemaker, which is absolutely spectacular. So Joe, I cannot thank you enough for joining us in the Outlier Project. Everybody is incredibly excited to meet you.
Scott, what can I say? What an introduction. That's fabulous. I call myself an author these days, but you know, Shoemaker, yes, that happened so long ago. Didn't say Reebok, yes, 1958. 1958, when Jeff and I decided that was the time that we should make our mark. But thank you for the introduction.
You're very welcome. So I'm going to take you back to 1958. You and your brother decide the family business, J.W. Foster. I know there was some contention there amongst the owners, one of which being your dad. And you guys decided to venture out on your own. What gave you the courage to be an entrepreneur? Or were you're 23 and you're like, what could go wrong?
Absolutely. 23, what can go wrong? Because J.W. Foster, my grandfather, of course, set this, he started the company in 1895. And he did that because he invented the spike running shoe. great. But if we're coming forward to 1958, what inspired? Well, Jeff and I had just finished 2 years of national service. That's something we had to do in those days. We did 2 years. I did my 2 years in the UK. Jeff did his 2 years in Germany. And in Germany, he could see the Adidas, Puma, he could see changes. So when we both came back, and we'd worked at the J. Lou Foster factory for a little while. I'd just only done 12 months. Jeff had done about 5 years. But we came back. We didn't really know much, but we did see when we came back the changes that we thought were needed because the company was dying. My grandfather from 1895 had grown a tremendous business. And that business, fantastic. He'd exported his products all around the world famous for hand-sewn running shoes. But his sons, my father and uncle, just didn't get on together. Yeah, you probably heard the story of Eddie Dassler and Rudy Dassler. They couldn't get on together. They fought. Yeah, they fought. But, Rudy had the sense to leave, go and set up Puma. Unfortunately, my father and uncle just feuded and feuded to the point where, the company was suffering because of that. And we could see it. When we came back, we could see this. And I would try and talk to my father and say, come on, we need to do something. Either all of us have got to set up something different, or you got to start talking to Uncle Bill. We've got to put this together. Didn't happen. All my father could say is, look, when I'm gone, when your uncle's gone, this company's yours. You can do what you like with it. I said, Dad, we don't want you to go. That's not the plan. We don't want you to go. But this company will be gone long before you are.
Yep.
Didn't make any difference. So Jeff and I decided we'd better go to college and learn a bit more about footwear, which we did because, you learn in a factory, you learn what goes on in that factory. But, we needed a broader feel for how do you make shoes in general. So we went to, and the beautiful thing about going to college is we made a lot of friends, a lot of people that could help us. So eventually when 1958 came along and we rented it was an old brewery that we rented, a bit of a rundown building, 3 floors. The ground floor had no windows, possibly because a brewery didn't need windows on the ground floor. I don't know. The middle floor, that was okay, but the floor itself was very weak and a bit sort of difficult. The top floor, that was no use at all because the roof was absolutely shut out. And every time it rained, it was water all the way. So we had more buckets and cans just collecting the water. So that the top floor was out. But the second floor, okay, it's useful. The machinery we bought, we put around the edge because we didn't trust the middle of the floor. And that was our start. Amazing. So, we thought, well, it was on a Friday that I went in and told my father, I said, look, Jeff and I are leaving. We're going to set up. And he didn't look at me at first. He just didn't even turn around. And I said, Dad, did you hear me? We're leaving. We're actually leaving the company. So he did. He turned around slowly and he picked up a paper opener, a letter opener off his desk and just moved towards me. And I'm thinking, what's going on? Then he just handed it to me and said, stab me now. Not really what we wanted to say. But anyway, that was it. We left and we set up our little factory. And that was Mercury Sports Footwear, as you mentioned earlier. So we're now Mercury Sports Footwear.
Amazing. Amazing. Joe, when I think of Reebok over the years, I think of innovation. I think you guys, and I think now we take a lot for granted, but you guys really were unbelievably innovative. Can you kind of walk us through some of the innovations that you headed up in your time at Reebok? Because I think it's just a laundry list of amazing creative ideas.
Well, I mean, in the first place, it's getting to the position where you can make a difference. And if we can make a difference, our difference was really getting the name known more than the changes in the product. The thing was to do the product right and to become part of the business. In the UK, we had about 3 or 4 competitors before Adidas and Puma came along. Adidas had changed the scenery because the old soccer boots, the old soccer boots were made out of heavy leather. And what they did, they changed soccer by making it out of soft leather. That was great. They did a few things, then they patented them. But what we had to do was to get into the business, first of all. And we looked at soccer. But by the time Jeff and I had decided we needed to get out to set up our own business, Adidas owned that. They'd taken it away from Foster's. Foster's had a very good business, an incredible business in the 1920s and 30s with soccer. So we set up on our own, and we're saying, well, we have to see what's going on. Nike, of course, they came in with nylon. That was something different. So we had to almost follow that trend to begin with, because if that's the trend and people want it, we had to go in there. We looked for different spaces. In the UK, we had something called fell running and orienteering. And this was a North of England sport. Plus, we'll talk about rugby. Rugby league was a North of England sport. So we had spaces to expand our company. But athletics and rugby league are not very big. I needed something bigger. So we eventually got in, and it's, how do you get bigger? Well, there's only so much size in track and field and whatever in the UK. It was America. I had to look to America. And this is where we had to become inventive, have new ideas. And this is getting that 5 stars. Took a while to get the 5 stars. But once we got the 5 stars, that got us into America. And then really, once in America, we could do some innovations, like the pump. But the pump was done because in America, we now got a big team. And it was always like, can we be different? Where are the white spaces? And the only way to really make that difference is to find the white space, the space where nobody is. And, it took me 11 years to get into America by going to the NSGA show. Yeah. So my part was getting the brand out, getting it bigger. And innovation is, and I think that really, if you look at Reebok today, you see the silhouette, you see the name in a window, you see, in fact, the heel tab at the back, which is integral, which is something that we've brought. So what I brought and Jeff brought was the visibility of Reebok itself, the name and that silhouette. That is still here today. Even on the Classic, you'll see the sole, the Roadstar sole. I remember designing that way back in 1976. Wow. So from 1976, we still have that sole today. And these were the sort of things that you do to get you visibility. Something that when somebody looks at Reebok, they say, that's Reebok. They could see it. So the identification of the brand was very, very important. Then we come to America. And in America, and I knew once we were in America, we could get global because people look at America. I'd been going across for 11 years, and every time I arrived at the NSJ show, I met so many people from every country in the world. They were all coming. What happens in America? So they were all coming to America. And so that was it. So once we got in America, once we got a 5-star shoe, we got a whole bunch of people, a whole team of people. And, the real innovation that really did something for Reebok, that was Angel Martinez. Angel Martinez, down in Los Angeles, he was a tech rep. But his wife, Frankie, she was going to these classes and coming back full of it. And I'll say, what are you doing? And she said, aerobics. And he said, what's aerobics?
Yeah.
Well, we're exercising to music. Oh, right. Can I come and see that? Yeah, next time. And this is the big innovation. Here was a big white space. There were girls there. They were doing aerobics. And he thought, this is fantastic. Why don't we make a shoe specifically for aerobics on a woman's last, just for women, women's sizes, and make it out of blood leather? He couldn't convince Paul Fireman, because when he went to see Paul Fireman, look, this is going to be great. Paul said, look, Arnold, slow down. We're a running company. Why do we want to make shoes for girls who are dancing? Yeah. But that didn't put Arnold off. He went round to the back and saw Steve Liggett. Steve Liggett was our product man. And he convinced Steve to get him 200 pairs of samples. And that was the innovation that really did something. All of a sudden, we were a woman's company. From a $9 million company, we became a $900 million company in 4 years. In 4 years. And that's because that white space, that innovation. After that, we sort of moved on, and the pump came in. You've got different bits and pieces, because when you've got teams of designers, and because Reebok really grew so fast, everybody was part of a culture, a winning culture. So that winning culture is creative, very creative. So we got lots and lots of ideas, lots that worked, probably lots that didn't work. But you only need to remember pump. And so many remember. They couldn't afford them, but when they did get them, that's. I'm watching D. Brown sort of on the center line, just dunking in them.
Yeah.
Going down and pumping his shoes up. So yeah, innovation is necessary, it's essential, but you need a team. You can't think of everything. But the one thing, if you want to credit me with, is the silhouette.
Yeah.
The silhouette, the name, and that's it. And the desire to get into the American market.
Absolutely amazing. I'm curious, you mentioned Puma and Adidas, and I think Nike as well. I'm just curious, how did you view them as the enemy? Did you use them as motivation to grow Reebok? How did you view them then, and how do you view them now?
I think it was more motivation, because we knew, and let's see now, we talk about starting a company in 1958 and all the way up until COVID. We did not have any recession. There was no recession in the sports industry, because the sports industry, it just grew and grew and grew and continues to grow. Right now, all street now is influenced by sport. So these companies were growing. I could see Adidas in the UK. They had a training shoe, which all the kids used to buy on the street. This is where it was going. Nike, they were growing as big with the running boom in America. Yeah, they were an incentive to get in there. We were born into the business. Foster started in 1895. Why shouldn't we have a piece of that? And so it was, let's get into it. Let's grow. These people, to me, they were not enemies. I mean, to me, there was something that I think you need competition to sort of make the changes. It's necessity is the mother of invention. So when you need to do something, you invent something, and you grow it. So I wouldn't say that Nike or Adidas at that particular time were considered as enemies, although I must thank Adidas, because 4 years into our business, our small business, we had to change our name because we couldn't register Mercury. That was a problem, but we changed it. 4 years in, we get a letter from the lawyers of Adidas. And at that time, our silhouette was 2 stripes and a T-bar. Mm-hmm. That was our silhouette. And they thought that 2 stripes and a T-bar infringed their 3 stripes. And 4 years in, we're just small, we're only small. But we get this letter and we think, I had to change our name. What do we do? And about 2 or 3 minutes, that's all. And we decided, just a minute, this is good. Adidas know we're here. They're concerned enough to write us a letter and tell us that we're infringing. Wow, that's great. pin that letter on the wall. We'll change our silhouette. And we changed it. We now have the Vector, which is like a little arrow and whatever. And we think that's more distinctive than our two stripes and a T-bar. So that did us good, as it were. So, thank you, Adidas. This is a problem. And we learned a lot from changing the name, changing the silhouette. We learned that it's okay. You get problems, but problems really are just there to test you. This is just an opportunity to change. So we were ready to change. And I think in today's word, it's called pivoting. We were ready to pivot. So we pivoted at every possibility. And so eventually with aerobics, we became the #1 global running shoe company or sports company, you could say, because by that time we had moved into other sports.
Was that your proudest moment, Joe?
I think it's one of them. One of the proudest moments was when Aztec got 5 stars in the Runner's World. Mm-hmm. That changed the difference. I had been trying to get into the American market for 11 years. I've been trying, and I had 6 failed attempts. I got a list of all the people: Clifford Saburn of Thousand Oak, Graham Palmer. I've got Eva Locke, Brian Fernie, Shoe Langer. All these guys. I've been trying over this period of time. And with Shoe Lang, I'd even been pushing. For 4 years, we tried to get into the market. The difference was that running was growing. And of course, Runner's World grew with it, from a single page to becoming a 50, 60 page full color magazine that told everybody where the next races were, who won the races, everything. So people bought it. And there must have been 3, 4, 5 million Americans running at that time who wanted that shoe. Well, when they said, this shoe, well, in fact, he started off by telling everybody which was the #1 shoe. One's a good idea, because the #1 shoe was Nike, which was great, great for Phil Knight, but he's importing his shoes. And of course, once you get a sudden demand, how do you bring the product in? And he couldn't get the product. So the retail business, all the retail stores, people were demanding it, but he couldn't get it. The year after, he changed it for another #1, which meant that the Nike one was out, and I think maybe New Balance or Brooks, or I can't remember the second one. He only did it 2 years before he changed that to a star rating. So Bob Anderson, Runner's World, said, we have star ratings, and 5 stars would be the top. And I knew we could make a 5-star shoe. Mm-hmm. We're in the business. We're there. We know what we could do. And we did. And that was the difference. We got a 5-star shoe in Runner's World. Millions of people wanted to buy our shoe. So that was the difference between us pushing. All of a sudden, we're being pulled in. That was a very proud moment. I remember it came out in July of 1979, the Runner's World issue. The shoe issue came out. And by that time, I'd met with Paul Fireman, and Paul Fireman had said, you get a 5-star shoe, Joe, and I'll be your man. I'll be your distributor. Okay, Paul. And I phoned him, and I remember phoning him because it came out in the last week of July. And of course, in the UK, we didn't get the results or anything. I said, Paul, can you go down to the kiosk? Just pick up a Runner's World and see if we got that 5 stars. He came back an hour later and said, Joe, Aztec, 5 stars. Fantastic. Not only that, Midas, which was a racing shoe, that's also got 5 stars. And Inca, which was a track spike, also got 5 stars. So we had 3 5-star shoes. And that probably was the proudest moment when we just hit it. But of course, you can't take away the fact that a few years later, we've become #1.
Right.
Numero uno in sports intelligence. We were #1. And we'd overtaken Nike, overtaken Adidas. Fantastic.
Unbelievable. I'm curious, who is your favorite athlete that you worked with over the years that represented your brand?
Well, of course, the majority of the athletes probably came more or less when I was doing, well, I put on Paul Fireman, and then I said, look, Paul, you look after America. Please look after America. Yep. We agreed that America would start to really sort of put on the business and bring athletes in. My favorite athlete, I'm just trying to think now, that we had David Jenkins, who you won't remember, but you know, I suppose really when you look at it, Shaquille O'Neal's got to be sort of the one. I think he sort of was the pinnacle. You know, Shaq was the pinnacle. And he still remains there as well. You know, we did have many others, but a lot of them, you probably, you know, they go back dated, and a lot of the UK who got us. We had Ron Hill in 1969. He won the Boston Marathon and broke the record, and that was our first real big win in America. But he was British. Unfortunately, he has died now because he was like me in his 80s. So he goes back a long time. But you know, I mean, if we're keeping up to that, and we had a good run with tennis, you know, Chang and again, some of these names are they drift back into the past. But I think we answer that bit by saying that Shaq, he's there now. Iverson, of course, Allen Iverson was and still remains, you know, a big name for us. And of course, now that Reebok is with ABG, and Shaq, of course, is a good piece of the action big there. Owner, big owner. So I think we're going to see a lot more growth now, because Reebok, of course, went into the shadows when Adidas bought the company, and the big thing that ABG have done is they've taken it out from the shadows. Now we're seeing Reebok, and what they have done. I mean, they're mainly known for licensing rather than for being a brand, but what they have done, they've given Reebok visibility. I think there's between 10 and 12 more global, big retailing people now are going to be bringing the brand to the front again. So I think the future's great. I think we've got a good time now for Reebok.
Joe, what do you want your legacy to be?
My legacy? Well, it's a guy. I mean, unfortunately, my brother didn't see it through, because we just got into America, and unfortunately, he contracted cancer and he died. And he was a good athlete. He was really good, but so the legacy. I think the legacy is that we had fun. We met the challenge, and having fun, and we succeeded. You know, so I think to say, and it's a bit in Shoemaker. I wrote Shoemaker because I'd retired. Well, not retired. I stepped back. Reebok never let me retire at that point. I stepped back, and eventually we got computers. We didn't have any computers when I was around, and these smartphones and doing what we're doing now. I would love to be able to have Zooms with all the people, but we didn't have that. But I'm reading Google, I'm reading Wikipedia, and they're telling me, how did this is how Reebok started. There's even a photograph of Joe Foster. And it may well have been a photograph of Joe Foster, but it was not me. So I thought I'd better sit down and get this straight, and started writing the book. It took me about 5 years, about 6 different drafts, and help from people to sort of get it into a proper story. You know, the chronology is a difficult thing when you think back over 30 years. When did this happen? When did it? Yeah. But it took some time. But what has happened is that people are reading this book and they're saying, "Oh, did you really do that?" we didn't think that's what we had to do. That was our job. We had to do it. Did you really do it? How did you do that? So now, as with the podcast, people are asking questions. How did that happen? You know, and we're going. I think we've got speaking later on today, and 130 people, and it's really asking questions like, "What was it like when you started?" Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did have electricity. It was, but really, you know, there was today it's so different. You know, we only had banks to go to for money, and banks, they were not good. You know, if you had collateral, okay. If you didn't have collateral, then I think they call it bootstrapping these days.
Right.
So
many on this call are bootstrapping their businesses. We have a long line of people who want to ask you a question. Okay. We actually have 2 Olympians on with us today. We've got Joe Jacoby and Joe Malloy, 2 of my favorite Olympians. And Joe Foster, this is how much Joe Jacoby likes you. He asked me a week ago if he could ask you a question. So he really wanted to make sure he was in the front of the line.
He was on the list.
So
Okay.
Joe Jacoby's in Spain. Joe Jacoby, you're up with the legendary Joe Foster.
Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you so much, Joe. I know there's a big list of people behind me that want to ask questions, so I'll try to be quick. First, I just want to say, Joe, that in 1992, I was not under contract with any shoe company when I was on the US Olympic team. I was proud to wear the greatest USA team tracksuit in the history of the US Olympic team, the Reebok tracksuit, on the top step of the podium, right outside my window here in La Chaux-de-Fonds. That tracksuit, the 1992 tracksuit, was amazing. I did not cover the Reebok name with a flag. I was super proud. Here's my question. I've never had the opportunity to ask anyone from Reebok, and it's pretty emotional to ask. And Scott, I'm so glad you brought up the question about athletes, because this is about an athlete. I was 16 years old in June of 1986. On June 17th, I went out to the Capitol Center in Washington, D.C., and I watched the NBA draft on a big teleprompter. I watched the Boston Celtics pick Len Bias with the second pick of the draft. On his last full day on the planet Earth, he went to Boston and he did two things. He signed a contract with the Boston Celtics, and then he went to the Reebok offices and signed a contract with Reebok. I'm just curious, Len Bias, like, I am from that generation. I know exactly where I was, what was happening at the moment we heard that Len had died. Were you in Boston on the 18th of June? Do you remember his visit to Reebok? What can you tell us or tell me about Len Bias and the relationship with Reebok, or that day that he came up to Boston to sign the contract?
Well, I only know his legend, and I was told an awful lot. No, I wasn't in Boston. I wasn't in the United States. This was all done with the Boston people. They put it together. We wanted to make a difference. We wanted to just concentrate on the USA. And I'm a Brit. You don't want a Brit running USA. You want Americans running USA. And they did a hell of a good job. Paul Feynman and his team did a tremendous job. My job was to put on people like Paul Feynman. I'd spent 11 years getting to the point of finding a distributor, and then we had to build a business. So mine was more on the business than the marketing side. But yeah, I remember so many legends that we did sign on. Sidney Marie as well. He was a great athlete that we had. But I think you'd have to talk to our marketing people. When companies get really big, there's a lot of things go on. And I'm traveling the world. I put on 30 different distributions around the world. And that was my job. My job, I've given the big job to Paul, and Paul did a tremendous job. And yeah, there are many legends. I think I have a book of all the different athletes that we signed on. So it was great at that time. The brand was going really fantastic. And and I think it is still going fantastic today. But we're on a new beginning. I would have loved to have met with all the athletes, but you can't be in all the places. You can't do these things. You have to give it to other people, and they did a great job. So sorry, I didn't. Nothing personal, but
no problem. Thank Again, thank you for the amazing uniforms in 1992.
And he won a gold medal in that uniform, Joe Foster. Just so you know,
right?
Well, so
congratulations. Yes.
We're leaving Spain and we're going to Ireland. Niraj, you're up. So from Belfast to Joe Foster.
Joe, great to see you. Thank you so much for your talk. As you can see, Shoemaker is very proud in the background there. Joe and I wrote for a business magazine last year. You wrote about Reebok, I wrote about LinkedIn. And really out of mutual respect, I bought the Shoemaker, and I think I promoted it about 6 times last year on LinkedIn, and you and Julie kept interacting with me saying thank you. I'm like, no, thank you. It's a fantastic book, and if anybody hasn't got it, I highly recommend you buy it and learn from it because it's superb. Question I have is actually about your philanthropy. because it's a big part of my life. And I know last week I donated to one of your school's projects. Can you tell us why that matters to you, just in case people who want to donate to it or support it in any way?
Well, I think I'm lucky. I'm lucky to have been a founder of Reebok and to have written a book which now people want to read. So I'm lucky that has happened to me, and I want to get the book to be a #1 seller, and that's fabulous. And with that, what happens is people begin to know Joe Foster, and it gives me the opportunity to push back, to get other people. Let's we're now part of Let's Localize, which is a charity, and I think we're just becoming involved with another education charity. And for me, it's I'm not a politician, but we only need to look at how much money is needed in schools today, and it's up to the public. We've all got to become part of this. I think over the years, governments have tended to push people away and say, no, we'll do the education, we'll do this, but they don't have the money. It's just impossible to supply all these, good thinking, good feelings to people. It's great. But, as in America, philanthropy, yes, if we can make some money, we should share it. And I think this is becoming more and more understood by the West now, that making a lot of money and just making a lot of money that's great. But what you really need to do is to be able to help other people go on a similar journey. And if you can give them good education, fabulous. So philanthropy, I think, is in us all. And if we're lucky enough to make that money and lucky enough to be around, why not? We should do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean. Great to see you again.
Yeah.
We're going to Florida. Doug, you're up with Joe Foster.
Hey, thanks, Scott, and thank you so much, Joe. And what's really interesting listening to a lot of the answers that you've been given is there's a real emphasis, a red thread on people. And that's yes. Scott's ethos, our whole group's ethos of people over everything. And that's really remarkable as it weaves into your story. Question, Scott was talking earlier to you about innovation. And I think that Reebok was the first brand of its kind to sign an endorsement deal with non-sports athletes. And I'm wondering if you can give us, share any insight. Was that just a Paul Fireman thing? Did you have any input in that kind of move? And what impact that had on, the Reebok brand and growth, at least in the US?
Well, I think these were great things that happened with Reebok. But, we had a great team. And as you were saying, it's to do with people. And it's also to do with markets. I knew that the American market was very special. And, the American way of thinking, the American way of doing things was really so important as far as I was concerned for Reebok. Okay. And we had a lot of people who dreamt up different ideas. And I wouldn't say I was peripheral. I got involved a bit, but mainly my conversations with people like Paul Fireman and Arnold Martinez and other people in the team was, look, get on with it, please. I'm doing my bit. I'm growing. I'm putting this global. So everything that they did, and okay, people used to say to me, we want to sell our product for value for money. And I used to say, well, unfortunately, you need influencers. You need somebody to influence your brand. And, if my grandfather, we could have been in his time when influencing, they probably didn't even know the word, but he gave his shoes to a guy called Alf Schrub. And in 1904, Alf Schrub, he broke 3 world records in one race. Also, he supplied the athletes who won gold medals in the 1920s. And, we've got there Eric Liddell, Harold Abrahams, and Lord Burleigh. They all won gold medals. And then, not too long ago, they were all immortalized in the film Chariots of Fire. So this is talking about influencing, and influencing, okay, in my grandfather's day, we're talking about performance. Now we're talking about street. We're talking about what influences anybody. And we know that Kanye West and Yeezy and Adidas, yeah, but Reebok started that craze. I can't remember who was the first, but it was to do with music, and it was to do with what influences people. So I think Reebok was really, really in the lead when it came to, kids are influenced by a lot of things, not just performance, not just sport. There's music, there's art, there's all these things that influence people. So influencing, I think that Reebok probably brought that to the fore, and everybody started to know that. And it was like when we did the aerobics, Jane Fonda actually bought a pair of shoes, and she wore them in her videos. And then after that, we're talking about different people in Hollywood. We were lucky that we had a big feel in Hollywood. So a lot of things that influenced people came out of Hollywood and came out of Arnold Martinez and what he did. But yeah, and since then it's grown and it continues to grow. Where we go in the future, who knows? But it's exciting. I think sport now has such an influence on everybody's life. So many people now wear shoes which are influenced. If they're not sports shoes, they're influenced by sport. And it's same with apparel. This is all influence now. So the sporting goods industry is an incredible one and continues to grow, but it does need that influence.
Yep. I don't know about you guys, but when I grow up, I want to be just like Joe Foster. This has been so much fun. We are going to sunny in Arizona. You're up with Joe Foster.
All right. Hi, Joe. Thank you. Well,
Really?
It's crystal clear that you've had a really rich and robust career. And what I always am super curious about for someone who has achieved such great success is, what was a moment where you had, at the time on the front end of it, felt like a perceived failure, and yet once you got past it was one of those powerful lessons?
Well, I think, first of all, I never felt a failure. I felt we failed on occasions. We didn't get something, but that's just a challenge. If you fail on something, you're going to learn. There's a lesson in this. Why is this happening? How can we change things? So I never felt a failure. I always felt a challenge, and I always thought that we can win, because I believe that the race isn't over until you've won. But during that race, there's got to be times when you're not in the lead, when things are tough. But it's not over, not until you've won. So I don't think anybody should consider themselves a failure. I consider if you recognize something is wrong and it's not worked, that's a recognition. I think, okay, we couldn't register our name Mercury, so we had to change our name. That was fun. And I think what you find from every time that you don't make it, there's a good lesson there, an incredible lesson that we can get around this. So I never ever, and I don't know whether that's because I think I'm an entrepreneur, but an entrepreneur has to be an optimist. And when you're an optimist, the glass is always half full. It's not half empty. You're there. What's next? Where can we go next? How can we change this? So, and I think if you have that attitude and you bring it into your company, you bring it into everybody else comes on as well. They all feel that way, and when you get a whole group of people with energy, a lot of energy, it works. And you just have to say to people, "Oh, okay, so that didn't work. What can we do?" If you just went into a straight line and just won everything that you went into, I'm sure you wouldn't really learn enough lessons in life to enjoy it. So failure, it's just a period. It's just something. It's just a problem. It's just, well, what's next? So it's always think what's next.
Love it.
Adjusting the sails, absolutely.
Yes.
All right, we are going to try to get a bunch of questions in the next 13 minutes. Chad, you are up. Chad in California, you're up with Joe.
Yeah, appreciate it here, Scott.
Yeah.
And yeah, Joe, wow, quite a surreal moment. You know, I'm over here envisioning myself many years ago, as Allen Iverson, Eric mentioned, practicing my crossover, playing basketball. Now here we are, the founder of Reebok. This is surreal to me. With that said, one thing I picked up, I noticed, right, it's from 1979, come over, meet Paul Fireman at the conference, the NSGA. 82 is the release of Freestyle, the women's specific shoe. And one thing that stuck out to me is how it swept across America. Can you take us back and help us understand, like, what was your feelings? What were your emotions in that time? Because I know this community has allowed me to expand conversation and relationships across the country. And I have some cool conversations with a couple of people on this call that we're looking to sweep across America with a couple of movements. We're not there yet. However, you've already done this, of course. Take us back to 82 when that happened. Like, what did that feel like, or what were your emotions then?
Well, it was an incredible time, wasn't it? I mean, you've got, you know, the wonderful thing is that Arnold Martinez, who I mentioned before, I mean, it was great that he lived in California, though he lived in LA, and he saw this aerobics that was growing in LA. And yes, yeah, what he saw is how do we do something different? And what was different is that this was women. You know, before that, sport had been sort of neutral, anything, but mainly it was male. All of a sudden, you know, and he thought, well, this is what women are doing, so why don't we make the shoe just for women? And that was a tremendously, you know, marketing-wise, that was fabulous, because it gave women something that they hadn't had that before. This was a sport for women, and women were participating. So the marketing behind this, and whether it was whether Arnold thought this through, or whether it was just there's only women do this, so we'll make it a woman's shoe. But he made it on a woman's last, and it gave women ownership. We were a small company then, 9 million, so we were not known like Nike, like Adidas, as male, as sweaty. All of a sudden, we were possessed by women. And so there's a tremendous amount of luck of being that size of company, having Arnold who saw something. And then what happened, of course, women owned this. When Jane Fonda bought them and bought a pair of shoes onto her video, all of a sudden, the women wanted it. And, you know, we had a big problem. We made it in glove leather because Arnold wanted this to feel like it, so comfortable. So make it in glove leather. When I heard about this, I thought, we had made a shoe in glove leather, but we made it suede out. This was being made with the skin side out, so you had to take some of the thickness off there to get the adhesive in. Glove leather is about 1 millimeter thick. By the time you take, no, it's 0.7 of a millimeter, sorry, and by the time you take the surface off, you're looking at 0.5 millimeter. Once you put a foot in that, did something in it, it was ripping apart. We cured it in the end, but had we been in any other place apart from, say, Los Angeles or in America, the company would have been dead with something like that. But the girls loved the shoes so much, they just went out and bought another pair, and that was great. And of course, once this became, some of the stars wanted it, Hollywood, all of a sudden, it just flew around the country. We went from 9 million to 30 million to 90 million to 300 million to 900 million in successive years. That was the growth, and it was all women because the women had something fantastic. So that was white space. When you're thinking of, you know, wherever you want to go, what is different? We were lucky. I mean, I don't think anything's come along since then that is new space that somebody can come into. But it took us from, say, a small company, and eventually became number one. We're overtaking Adidas and Nike. Yeah, and at that time, the one thing I think that was a problem is we forgot to sell shoes because we were so busy trying to keep up with demand. It was incredible. Keeping up with demand was a big, big problem. And at the end of it, everybody's looking around and saying, what do we do now? We had to learn how to sell again.
Absolutely amazing. One of the cool things that I don't know if you guys have noticed throughout this entire conversation is how often Joe shines the spotlight on other people. It's remarkable to be the founder of an iconic brand, and he consistently is shining the spotlight on other people. It's incredible. Eric Silverman in Baltimore, you are up.
Hey, what's going on?
Oh, okay. Oh, brilliant.
I love it. I love it. Hey, look, I don't have a question anymore. You guys are all rock stars and you asked 3 of my questions I had on the list. So Joe, it's a pleasure meeting you. I've loved your brand since the 80s. I could never afford them, my friend, but I can now. And we have Reebok all over the house, and I bought them as an adult, and I live like a child every time I wear my pumps, especially when I'm taking my son to basketball practice.
Well, that's the thing. The thing is to wear a shoe that you love. And
That's
and we all think that Reebok is a brand to love, and it has a story. And we could take it way, way back, and we could tell you so many stories of why to love Reebok. So thank you. That's great. It was lovely to see that you got the shoe there on display.
Very cool. Vikram, you're up with Joe Foster.
Thank you, Scott. Hi, Joe. Vikram Dias. So, Joe, I grew up in Mumbai, India, spent 23 years there. And when I was growing up, Nike and Adidas were like sort of everybody wearing this Beaverton, Oregon shirts and, sort of really being, so obsessed about those brands, right? When you expanded into the American market, Joe, and clearly this use case around women accepting your brand and taking it to this amazing revenue sort of market, I want to bring you back to what has been Joe Foster's leadership philosophy as you've grown in life, as you've been through different evolutions, and you expanded into the American market, and you found that use case with Jane Fonda's shoe. But wait, now I've got different brands coming in. You've got Under Armour kicking it in high gear. So as you evolve, Joe, what's made you great in terms of your leadership philosophy? Can you share a little bit about what has been that evolving philosophy? Is it having a great team of leaders? Is it having good people? Is it having a good manufacturing process? Because when you stroll down the aisles, the colorful shoes, the design, the sole, the leather, and you look at the shoe and you say, oh my God, there's so much built into this product that I would love to sort of know a little bit more about. So that leadership philosophy, Joe, that drove Reebok to be who it is today.
Well, I think you've touched on most of the answers. The biggest thing is people. You've got to have the right people, and you have to avoid egos. Egos are not good when it comes to building a company. You want people. It's a team, and it's building a team. Whether we were lucky or whether it's just that we generated that energy, that winning culture. And, we had a product. I mean, there must be many products like selling tablets and stuff like that. It's not as sexy, not as easy to sort of fall in love with as a product. And, we thought we had the most beautiful product and we all loved it. And people say, well, how do you employ people? We didn't have to go out and employ people. People were so wanting to join us that you got the right people, because if it's in their feeling, their heart, they're part of it. And you've got to make people part of it. Who knows Joe Foster? Over the last 50, who knows? No, nobody knows Joe Foster. That wasn't, for me, it was the brand. For me, it was Reebok. You've got to have the brand. And so it was always selling the brand, not selling Joe Foster. Right now, selling Joe Foster a bit because we put a book out there. And so, that makes a difference. But yeah, people love to be with a winning brand. So creating a winning culture is so very, very important.
Fantastic. Our cleanup hitter today is Chris Holmes. So Chris, you're up with Joe.
Thank you. Yeah, Joe, it's been great to hear all of your stories and all of the questions and answers. But my question is a little different than some of the other questions asked. Is As somebody who's a low man on the totem pole, it feels like they have a lot of ideas. How would you advise an individual contributor, someone who doesn't necessarily have the decision-making power within a company, but feels like they have ideas, to get strategic buy-in from those that can make that happen? What would be your advice?
Well, I don't know which company you're working for, but anybody at the top should listen. I mean, that's their job. People operating and running a company are not the ones who have the ideas. They're the ones who can help those ideas go through. Because all the ideas in Reebok, I don't say all of them, I must admit that I designed certain things which are still around today, the Roadstar and stuff like that. But you can't do everything yourself, so you must. People in the operation have got to look down, in fact, come down, join the people and say, invite a lot of ideas. And if there's two things, if people are not listening, one, it's the wrong company that you're in. The other one is try and do it yourself. Put your ideas out there. There's a lot of things out there today that you can reach out to. There's a lot of people who can give you advice, can help you, can bring the money, but you need people who will listen to you. Otherwise, you're banging on a door which is it's empty inside. You must find the people. And do you work for a larger company?
It's not super large, about 700 people.
I'm sorry, that was.
Oh, we have about 700 folks.
That's okay. And nobody's listening?
I wouldn't say nobody's listening. I'm pretty persistent. So.
You just got to keep on persisting then. I say, otherwise go somewhere else. There's lots of places to go and lots of people will listen to you. It's just keep, and when you say keep persisting, that's what I did to get into America. It took me 11 years. I kept going. Resilience, you just got to keep going. And if you keep pushing long enough, you'll get there.
Thanks for that, Joe.
Joe, I promised your beautiful wife, Julie, that we would be done in an hour. Right. And I want to be respectful of that. But I can't tell you how honored we are in the Outlier Project to have you on today. I mean, this was absolutely spectacular. You're an amazing human being, and you're an incredible businessman, and you're a huge inspiration. So everybody, if you haven't bought Shoemaker, I know that you're going to go to Amazon and buy it after this. But Joe, I really wanted to say thank you for carving out the time and spending it with us, because I know that you're a very, very busy man, and I wish you nothing but the best.
It's a great pleasure, Scott. It really is. It's fantastic, and it's nice to have those questions, because it makes you think back on, well, what did I do? Was it purposeful or what? But there's usually something in there that I remember. Yes, this is how we did it. People are so important, and the right people, you have to have them. Egos, no, but the right people, yeah.
Amazing. Guys, follow Joe on Instagram. You're going to see a guy who's 87 years old, traveling the globe with his beautiful wife, Julie, who's right there, enjoying great glasses of wine and living his best life. So Julie and Joe, thank you guys so much. If anybody wants to hang out for a little bit for overtime, feel free. But Joe and Julie, thank you guys so much.
Thanks. Nice to meet you.
Scott. Yes, lovely. We have to go, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Bye.
What do you think, guys? How cool was that?
Where do you start?
Down memory lane.
Wow.
Yeah, that's.
One of the things.
The humbleness. The humble. I mean,
incredible. Incredible. People that haven't accomplished one